Okay, thanks. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the annual Nonprofit Forum. I'm going to bracket my brief remarks this morning with gratitude. I want to open with a sincere thank you to our keynote speaker yesterday, Mindy Erlob, who stepped in at the very last moment and provided an incredibly moving and informative description of her experiences as an activist, a research participant, and a carrier of the C9orf72 gene, and her role supporting folks across the research continuum. Mindy might not describe herself as uniquely courageous, but I just really wanted to take this opportunity to say that I do, that we all do. And we are grateful for the leadership and engagement of individuals like Mindy who push our research forward. So thank you. One of the reasons Walter describes this as one of the best meetings of the year is because we learned so much from all of you in these discussions. And so I have the privilege of taking a few minutes this morning and recapping some of the themes that emerged from the various panels and discussions yesterday. That was a lot of welcomes. Okay, so we heard a lot about different ways that we deliver value, that NIH and researchers deliver value to people with lived experience of disease, and that people with lived experience in turn provide enormous value back to the research community. It's a true partnership. And I want to reiterate that as our mission is focused on improving the neurological health of all people, we have to find better ways to engage with all people throughout the research progress. And that's something that we heard again and again. This engagement improves the science and makes the research outcomes more meaningful. And one of the really, I think, helpful ways to think about this is that the goal of engagement is not necessarily things like increased enrollment, which really provides a specific short-term value to the researcher, but more broadly to ensure that all people can participate in ways that are meaningful for them, and that collectively advances our research goals much more effectively. We also have to bear in mind that everybody has to be trained in this engagement. Researchers also have to be trained to engage all communities, to listen and learn from them. And in turn, we have to provide meaningful training to people in how to engage in the research process. Some of the key points that were highlighted was accountability, the importance of the research enterprise holding the research enterprise accountable for partnering with participants and with the larger community, including with providers who are not directly involved in research. Generally, inclusion was critically important, including individuals at the individual level to understand their needs, to partner with communities, with care providers, again, not just those directly involved in research, and researchers from different disciplines. The importance of training a diverse workforce and creating multidisciplinary research teams, care centers, et cetera, was highlighted in a variety of different discussions. Equity was emphasized. The importance of equity, especially, but not only in access to clinical research, to training, to data, and to groundbreaking new technologies, including artificial intelligence. And trust. This has always come up in our discussions at the Nonprofit Forum, and it was reiterated again very eloquently yesterday. And I just really want to emphasize from the NINDS perspective that we are focused on rebuilding trust. NIH has to be focused on rebuilding trust and ensuring that participants, for example, have the right to access their own data, but also are empowered and have the choice of whether and when to access it or not. We also want to ensure that the people with lived experience can access all the information that they need, including informed consent documents. And I thought there was a really nice description of how to do that in a very pragmatic way yesterday. So it is as part of this collective community that we can celebrate many of the successes that have begun to really, I think, accumulate in addressing neurological disorders. In fact, just yesterday, Walter was talking about a new success in potential treatment of Angelman syndrome. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that front. But one of the challenges in increasing the rate of these successes and successful ways of treatment disorders is the lack of fundamental understanding in how the normal brain works. The lack of that understanding makes it harder for us to intervene and restore normal function when it is disrupted in a neurological disorder, for example, or injury. Remarkably, for example, we still don't even know the cell types of the brain. And so one of the recent investments from NIH is the Brain Initiative Cell Census Network, which was launched in 2017. Very quickly, in 2021, they published their first comprehensive census and atlas of cell types in the motor cortex of multiple different mammalian brains. This was our first sort of glimpse into the scope and complexity, not just of the cell types, but how they're organized, and began to help us understand some of the underlying organizational principles. I also want to emphasize, given our discussion about the value of multidisciplinary teams, that this was the result of hundreds of researchers from a variety of different disciplines and backgrounds and different countries. Just a few short years later, they published the complete cell atlas of the whole mouse brain. This is 32 million neurons. And so we understand now much better the different cell types, how they're organized, and how an entire brain, in fact, can be organized, and how those connections can allow for a variety of different critical behaviors. Concurrently, they also published drafts of the human and non-human primate brain cell atlas. So this has been an extraordinary advance, and I just wanted to take a moment and say why we think this sort of thing can be helpful. I think that this was one of the examples that Walter was referring to yesterday. So this deeper understanding of cell types and how they're organized can have the ability, hopefully very quickly, as in this example, to provide benefit to patients. So in a very small clinical trial, they found that epidural electrical stimulation of the spinal cord restored walking in 9 patients with a spinal cord injury. And it was the detailed molecular atlas of the mouse spinal cord that let them understand sort of what was happening, that stimulation activated a subgroup of neurons, and that what was happening is that they were remodeling part of the spinal cord, that certain types of spinal neurons that lost their inputs to the brain after injury can be reawakened or repurposed to restore movement if they're given the appropriate combination of stimulation and rehabilitation. So that's just one small example, and it provides, I think, a lot of hope for different treatments to come. But I want to take a moment and really acknowledge, of course, we still really have a long way to go. The nervous system conditions have a huge burden of disease across all populations, and that burden is not does not have an equitable impact across those different populations. But overall, it is astonishing that 43% of the world's population has conditions affecting the nervous system. So we have a lot to do, and I'm glad that we are doing it together. We are trying to address the lack of equity in these neurological conditions and their impact on different populations. This was mentioned yesterday in Dr. Benson's extraordinary panel, but I just wanted to take a moment and really reiterate that not only was our effort to develop a strategic plan to really more strategically address research in this area to reduce these health disparities and address neurological disorders in a variety of different underserved and underrepresented populations. But the research investment coming out of that is a community engaged program. So the Community Engaged Health Equity Research and Neuroscience Initiative is a real effort to engage communities, to identify issues, to partner together, and to train, which is one of the things that really came out, I think, of the discussions yesterday, to train folks at a variety of different levels that are part of the community to come together and help us develop research solutions and interventions so that we don't continue to just admire the problem of health disparities, but we actually restore health equity. And I wanted to note that this is also a focus at the NIH level, that the new NIH director is very aware that the health of the US population is declining, and that decline is steepest among the underserved and underrepresented, including in rural populations. And so this year, she has launched a primary care focused clinical research network that is based in primary care research providers across the country, really making sure that we aren't leaving folks out of these discussions, right? That we are really trying to partner broadly with all folks across the country. And I want to just really note that this network has a real focus on allowing patients and providers more choice to participate in and influence studies, and to help us understand what is most relevant to their needs as people with lived experience of disease and the community's need as a whole. So I think that this reflects a lot of the themes that came out of yesterday, and I just thought it was helpful to share that I do think collectively the direction is moving in a more partnership-based research model. So I really want to thank you all for engaging with us as partners as we move forward. And then I want to just close my remarks with thanking everybody who has helped to make this meeting so extraordinary so far. I'm sure that Walter will thank you again at the end of the day. But I really want to thank the steering committee, which includes a lot of NINDS staff, but also an extraordinary number of folks from the external community who volunteer their time, effort, service, and really help us think through carefully how to make this meeting valuable. I want to thank again our keynote speaker, our panel moderators, the logistics team who keep the meeting running more smoothly, the folks who are monitoring the virtual question and answer, and all the NINDS staff who are here today, who have been working on this for weeks and months. Many of them, including Rebecca Corlew, who's right in front of me, really bring together the communities here, not just for today, but throughout the year. And finally, I really want to acknowledge the extraordinary work of Andrea Barea, who really helps to make this meeting so valuable for so many people. So thank you for that. So with that, I will leave with a description of the rest of the agenda. Thank you.